Hello, my name is Vibhor Donald from Post University. I'll be doing a PowerPoint presentation today on New York City strategic planning. Today's task is provide a briefing on New York City's strategic plan on emergency management and preparedness. Condition in a classroom environment, provide a PowerPoint presentation on New York City emergency management strategic plan. Standards, provide a presentation on New York City emergency management and preparedness goals. Environmental consideration is none. So New York City has selected 6 goals for its new strategic plan. Goal number 1, optimize citywide preparedness and outreach efforts to read all to ready all New Yorkers for emergencies. Enhance the city's response to recover and mitigation operation to include new and growing threats, capabilities, and city entities. Foster a diverse, inclusive, and equitable agency to better support the communities we serve. Prioritize a people-centered culture to develop and retain the next generation of emergency managers in New York City. Leverage the latest technologies from the public sector and the private sector to inform and make critical decisions. Promote emergency management throughout leadership and innovation to solve complex problems. So, goal number 1, New York City emergency management is responsible for leading emergency and preparedness. So, this is in their new preparedness plan that they are taking in consideration on how they can manage changes towards preparedness efforts within their emergency departments. Another point, New York City emergency management will continue to adapt, advance emergency planning and training experience. New York City's emergency management closely coordinates with government agencies and local organizations to foster community-based emergency planning and response. So one of their main focus is to focus on all the boroughs within the New York City. And specifically, we're just going to talk briefly about Brooklyn Heights, which is one of the neighborhoods in the borough of Brooklyn. So that's what New York City's main goals are, to focus more on their borough communities and provide preparedness and planning in those communities. Continuing on goal number 1, New York City's emergency management will expand its effort to engage more grassroots community level organization and continue to coordinate with cross-sector partners through outreach, engagement, and education efforts to reach every New Yorker. So New York City's plan includes basically to reach out via social media campaigns, information technology, and meet new partners towards their preparedness goals. Still continuing on goal number 1, New York City's management will perform a throughout assessment of the city's preparedness program and coordinate with agency partners to establish clear expectation for agency response capabilities. So this is within their goals that they are going to go community to community, and they will do their own assessment and see what are the shortfalls and what they need to improve on within those communities to compile in their whole program. Goal number 2, alongside with emergency planning, New York City emergency management is responsible for coordinating, managing, and maintaining critical functions and resource throughout the cycle of crisis, including response, recovery, and mitigation operations. Gaps identified during emergencies such as Hurricane Sandy and the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the city's need for a long-term recovery strategy. So within this goal, it's going to be mainly focused towards New York City's long-term recovery strategy on what we need to do in terms of hurricane response, COVID-19 response or towards any other disaster that New York City may have to face. As the city's threat landscape evolves, so do the private and public sector stakeholders who play critical roles in addressing these threats. New York City Emergency Management will coordinate with new partners to codify their capabilities and responsibilities in planning documents. So New York City has new initiative for their private sector partners. If they do partnership with them, uh, they will. New York City Emergency Management will evaluate and recommend improvements to strengthen the emergency financial, legal, and logistical capabilities of city agencies. Continuing on to goal number 2, New York City Emergency Management will refine a scalable response structure to enable increased agency participation and localized approaches. Basically, going back to the communities, that's what their main focus is on. Go back to the local communities, prioritize those, and see how they can better their response times. Goal number 3, as New York City Emergency Management strives to encourage equitable emergency planners, it is critical that its staff represents the diverse community they serve. So they want to bring more diversity within their organization, which can help them improve in their planning process. And as everyone knows, New York City is one of the most diverse places within the United States. So having diversity within emergency management departments will help the New York City Emergency Management Department very well. Continuing on to goal number 4, New York City's emergency management is its greatest assets in its staff. In addition to their day-to-day responsibility, all New York City emergency management personnel are assigned a role in city's emergency operation centers. New York City emergency management staff amass institutional knowledge and build relationships with agency partners that are critically important to efficient emergency operations. So New York City staff plays a very, very important role within their communities. Like we talked about in our previous goals, communities play a huge, huge role towards the success of this emergency management department. Continuing on to goal number 4, New York City Emergency Management will continue to assess its organization structure. Goal number 5, New York City Emergency Management centrally collects and disseminates critical operation information to provide decision makers with the context needed to gauge response progress and redirect resource. New York City Emergency Management will also implement technological solutions to expand its financial and legal operation to support large-scale emergencies. So basically, within this goal, they're talking about how we can bring new technologies to help towards our emergency management planning process mitigation efforts. Uh, Goal number 6, the increasing impact and frequency of emergency facing New York City stresses the agency's ability to centrally house and manage operation. New York City Emergency Management will identify and implement strategies to sustainably surge the city's capability to respond large-scale emergency. New York City Emergency Management's leadership. The agency will promote innovative ideas, development, and implementation from staff and agency partners. Continuing on to goal number 6, New York City Emergency Management will incorporate lessons learned from telework, virtual operations, to inform future blue sky and emergency response. Basically, within this goal, they're talking about the newer technologies, and as we have seen in the COVID-19 pandemic, how most of public sector workforce went to working from home, and what the emergency management can do to incorporate those type of technologies within their system and their local community. so they can still be operational throughout the emergency process. So, in summary, we learned to develop this plan. New York City's Emergency Management Office of Strategic Operations solicited input from every staff level to assist the agency's progress in meeting its inaugural strategic plan goals. Incorporated lessons learned from recent incidents, including COVID-19 and post-tropical cyclone Ida. Ida, and analyze emergency management trends across the country. Pending any questions, this concludes my briefing.